Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Recently, I published an article over at the Odyssey of Self called The Seven Stages of Awakening. I'm going to create a video here as well to speak to it because I thought it was actually quite interesting how it developed. So I'd like to share the seven stages as how I see it. I'm sure other people talk about it, and what I am going to share is based on my own personal experience and observations, but of course, it might be interesting for yourself to create your own stages of awakening, if you will. And through the process, it allows for quite a lot of realizations to arise, which I experienced writing my own seven stages of awakening. And seven stages is naturally a very sacred number, a very spiritual number. So I loved how synchronistically this aligned perfectly, and I'm going to share this all with you. If you would like a little bit more information and more details, I also have a podcast on this over at the Odyssey of Self. It's in the members section, and the link is below if you would like to go further with this. But in this video, I'm going to be talking about the seven stages. I'm going to also dive into each stage in a bit more detail and explain it firsthand of what I have experienced through the process of awakening. And remember, this is not a linear process. There are stages here that will be almost incremental on a greater scale or greater level. But you can dip in and out of any of these stages at any given time. You might go through three of these stages at the same time. There's no right or wrong, and that is the beauty of our life. And this experience is that it's vast and is multidimensional, and each stage offers an incredible opportunity for growth and awareness. And awakening is the awakening of consciousness. This is where we see our truth. And this does take courage and dedication to work through for understanding our inner truth and awakening our true self. So awakening is the process of dismantling our layers, questioning our behaviors, our beliefs, peering into the unconscious aspect of self, the subconscious aspect of self, and not shying away from this deeper work, because also shadow work is part of this, which can be very deterring for a lot of people. Also, many of you may be familiar with ascension, and ascension and awakening are different. Awakening is the conscious work to break through our layers, to understand more of ourself through self-reflection, through understanding our patterns, through deep exploration. When we do so, we awaken more consciousness, we awaken more awareness, we understand ourselves more, we're able to transcend Maslow's hierarchy of needs, transcend the difficulties that have been perpetuating within ourselves, and we gain a great deal of self-actualization through the process. And ascension is operating out of a higher frequency, a higher level light frequency. So usually working with the upper chakras. You may hear it also with ascension, the ascension symptoms as we're moving through stages of ascension as well. It's, I feel, very beneficial to understand both of these and how they can work harmoniously with your practice to gain the most of both. I find that sometimes those who want to venture into the experience of ascension can bypass a lot of the work needed within the unconscious and with the inner self to understand the whole self. And I feel the two of these together can be very, very complementary for evolution. So remaining human and grounded and real about ourselves while also allowing our soul, our beingness to ascend through a higher state of being. Okay, so let's go into the seven stages. I'm going to overlay it on the screen, but I'll speak to it in detail. We're going to start off with number one, which is enough is enough. So this is the stage where you are basically declaring that you have had enough, that something needs to change. This may happen in a very small incremental declaration. This also can be a very big statement that you're sending out to the universe, and it can happen over and over and over again. And I do find when we declare, when we make a statement, when we're creating a new path for ourselves, we will get tested by the past, which I'll get to in a little bit later as we move along, but we can go through these in many different cycles and in many different experiences because we are not the same person as we were when we move on this path. We're constantly changing, even though sometimes it may not feel that way. But when we say enough is enough, I do not want this anymore, or I want to create change in my life, or I want something better, I just don't know what it is, you're creating a fracture in the quantum of where you were and where you're about to go. So this is usually the first step of basically either bottoming out, which I experienced in my life where I full on flatted out, bottomed out, went deep into the underground, and I was done. I literally could not physically, emotionally, psychologically, energetically move forward. And sometimes we need to get to that point where we are simply done and exhausted. But again, this can show up in different ways of simply saying, maybe I'm done with these kinds of relationships, or maybe I'm done with this career path, or maybe I've had enough of living in an unhealthy way. So it can happen in very small, again, statements or big, massive eruptions and fractures in our state of being and in the quantum. The next stage is going to be the opening. This is where we've made the statement, enough is enough, something has to change. And then all of a sudden, we're drawn to learn new things. We're drawn to teach ourselves. We are drawn to self-improvement techniques, maybe esoteric practices, maybe spiritual practices. We're starting to become curious and open to other ways of existing. So we may become very thirsty for information. We may go down the rabbit hole of discovery or of the mysteries of life. And this is where the opening to the great pathway, the pathway that we started to make the statement towards, starts to open. The third stage is the dark. This is where a lot of people may find themselves going back or giving up or retreating altogether. This is the big daddy stage. This is where I was thinking almost Saturnian energy met with Pluto. This big, massive lesson that we need to learn by going through the underworld, by going into ourself, by exploring aspects and avenues of ourself that we would tend to avoid, or would tend to be uncomfortable with, therefore bypass or numb out or just avoid it altogether, just not want to go there. The dark is our way through. This is shadow work. This is understanding our emotions and what we've suppressed. And I've had a conversation recently, and even with myself, a realization of when we embark on this path of any kind, it's going to be different, of course, for everyone. But what I have noticed and what I've seen with other people and had these conversations of, why am I becoming so sensitive? Why am I feeling so much? Why am I crying so much? Why is this so difficult? Is because we're unlocking suppressed aspects of ourselves that have been dormant for years, maybe even lifetimes. And in our modern society, we're not taught how to feel. And in some cases, we may be taught that feeling is weak, that feeling is being wuss and being fragile, that expressing your emotions and being vulnerable and expressing your feelings are bad. Therefore, we tend to suppress our emotions. We have no idea how to process them. We have no idea how to filter, how to interpret, how to integrate, how to understand. And it all starts to rise to the surface for us to feel. And because we haven't felt like that before, it's going to feel very unsettling. But the more we attune to our feelings and to our sensitivities and to our inner landscapes, the more we'll go through a phase, of the disruption and feeling really sensitive, being on our butts, crying maybe a lot. But the more we work through it, the more maturity we develop with our emotions. This leads to emotional intelligence, but it also leads to a heightening of one of our major superpowers, our intuition, trusting our senses, seeing beyond the ordinary, understanding our psyche, understanding our dreams, the unconscious aspect of ourselves, awakening feelings and sensations that we have not felt before and we have not worked with before, which is such a gift. And I'm speaking from experience. The ability to sense on the level that I'm sensing now is unbelievable. I never even could imagine before what it would feel like. And now I'm still learning them and adapting to them and exercising them. But the more I am doing this, the less the less emotional turbulence I'm experiencing, but the more heightened sensory experiences I am developing. So we have to go through the bridge. We have to go through the gateway of the suppression, the awakening of our emotions, the sort of, I guess, the undercurrent that becomes greater and greater as we move through the emotional landscape. And then it's moving into the development of our emotions and our senses. So we need this dark period to dive into ourselves, as uncomfortable as it could be. The darkness gives us the answer to our light. We will not be able to get to our true self unless we go through our dark. That is bottom line with this. And unfortunately, because again, we are not equipped in our modern society to navigate our deeper, darker aspects of ourself, we can numb out, we can avoid, we can revert to our old patterns and our old lifestyle and our old way of being. But then we get discouraged that we're still there and we're still experiencing the same things that we sent the declaration to. So if we don't go into the dark, we're going to stay in the same place that we were without moving forward. And sometimes it seems counterintuitive, or it may challenge our inner understanding of self and life, but that's the point. We do need to be challenged, and our perceptions need to shift. Our realities need to shift for us to see differently, and for us to be differently, for us to break our patterns, for us to release, for us to illuminate, and then integrate and bring it inward for us to be more whole. So the fourth one is going to be the spiral. And this is where moving out of the darkness, or even still in the darkness, these stages can overlap and consist of many different layers and levels within. So the 3 and the 4 can exist together, but the 4, I find, is when we start to kind of spiral out of the darkness a little bit by learning maybe healing modalities, techniques, seeing specialists, working on ourselves. So we're actively working on releasing the old patterns and emotions. We're actively working on healing ourselves. We're actively working on creating change within ourselves and within our lives. So this is the spiral out. This is the spiral up after going into the descent into the dark. The 5th stage is the light. Now, this is where we start to realize our true essence of self. We start to feel more of who we are. We start to have those aha moments. We start to realize our true gifts. We start to find our voice, or find our confidence, or find aspects of ourself that had been buried long ago. We may feel lighter in this phase. We may feel more at peace. And again, this can happen over and over and over and over again. But in this particular stage is when we are connecting with our true self, when we're starting to, again, connect with our light. We're starting to see the inner workings of these dualities that are at play at any given time within ourselves. We become more perceptive, we become more aware, we become more responsive with ourselves and with our environment. And yes, this is where our grip begins to loosen, and we become more at peace and at flow with ourself, and of course with the universe, with all, and the greater rhythm of life. The 6th stage is the becoming. I recorded a video not too long ago about the cost of authenticity. This stage comes with a bit of a caveat. We become more of our true authentic self by going through these stages and these experiences within our inner self. Therefore, we become more of our true self as a result. We are breaking through the barriers and the layers and the levels within ourselves that had been created as forms of protection, personas, ego identity, that which has kept us safe, but also that which has kept us very concealed. Also, where the fragmentation develops, where our inner self, our true self, wants more, but our outer persona, or the mechanisms of control, our behaviors, our patterns, our perceptions, our beliefs become very solidified, encasing our true self. So when we are breaking through that, and I also should mention, I just forgot, didn't mention something for the darkness. The darkness, moving back into stage 3, I think it was 3, was when we do also fragment or fracture the illusions that we have created. So that also can create the darkness when we are shattering through our illusions and when we are questioning our reality. That can put us into a downward spiral and into the darkness. That can also awaken grief and sadness or resentment towards our past, or maybe even expose wounds of shame that have been held within. So when we are in the stage of becoming, we are becoming more of ourself. We are overriding some of the shadow aspects, or I should say maybe overriding, but integrating the shadow aspects. But then through the process, we become more confident with ourselves. We start to shift our bodies. Our body responds as a result. We start to heal. Our back starts to feel straightened. We have more voice. We have more confidence in ourselves, the whole gamut. So we start to adjust on many different layers and dimensions within ourselves in the stage of becoming. But the caveat is when we are adjusting to our true self, which is new for a lot of us, we're also going to awaken dormant fears that are associated with our true self. So, as children, if we're our true self, in the essence of our truth, in the essence of our being, expressing, playing, creating, being, and we were punished or we weren't acknowledged or we were ignored, we could have had trauma associated with being true, with being authentic. If you subscribe to past life incarnation, which is something I practice, there can be wounds brought through, very traumatic memories also brought through into the soul's memory as part of the experience of being authentic. So when you awaken your true self, when you start to understand who you are and the essence of self, there may be a lot of fears associated with it. So this stage does have a caveat because this can kick us back into stage 3, which is the dark, in order for us to become more. So we need to go through these constant spirals and these constant stages for us to become more, right? So becoming is related to the wholeness, the becoming of our true self. And it will come with, I feel, little mini number 3s, the dark phases, for us to understand the fears that are still lingering in order for us to work through and become even more. Number 7 is the awakening. And we may have many, 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 many of these experiences over and over again. But with each awakening, we understand ourselves more. We see more. Our lens of perception starts to grow. We start to understand life more because we have understood ourselves more. We have developed a great deal of compassion towards life and towards others because we have arrived at more compassion within ourselves after experiencing our pain and understanding our pain and understanding what it means to be human. Our levels of compassion increases because we have released from the pain within ourselves. This gives us a greater awareness of the dimensions of reality, the dimensions of life, the context of the universe, the context of being a human, the context of the trees and nature and life itself. This is where our lens becomes very, very widened, and we take in so much from life. The process of awakening is when we understand our relationship with the universe. This is where synchronicities arise. This is when our inner knowing develops, our intuition, our inner guidance, or the clair knowing, all those clairs that we can access, some more than others, but I have a few clairs actually that have become stronger and stronger. This is also where we get to channel because we have removed the obstructions of control and certainty and knowing. Our channels are then clear and we can draw on greater insights and information for creating, right? So awakening is this process of something greater, knowing an inner truth, a truth that lives beyond borders, a truth that is sensory, a truth that is a knowing, a truth that is a being. And this is the knowing of what it means to be a human being, not bypassing or not avoiding the experience, but arriving in it. And from that place, it grows and it grows and it grows into a new state of being. All right, so these are the 7 stages as far as I have come to realize and what I have experienced, but it might be fun for yourself to develop your own stages and reflect on what you've gone through and how you have evolved and how you've grown and what it has taught you. There is no right or wrong. This is not a linear path, and it is up for us to experience and for us to create. So I hope this video found you when you need it the most. And if you're looking for the full article and podcast, there's more information over at the Odyssey of Self. I'm wishing you all the best on your journey and beyond. Until next time, take care.